When I saw the video about this young girl telling Elon Musk what she had to offer, Elon Musk then put her to test. This girl we are talking about came from a very humble background. Anything we are doing in life, let us take it serious. You know, determination is all about life. If you are not determined in life, there is no way you can go forward. When I saw this video about this young girl, I was inspired. So that is why I decided to bring it to my page for you, my followers, and everyone to be inspired too.
Elon Musk was standing on stage at a Tesla event, addressing a large crowd of engineers, investors, and fans. He was talking about Tesla's latest advancements, including how their new AI technology could revolutionize the automobile industry. The room was full of excitement, with people clapping and cheering every time he shared something new. After his presentation, Elon stepped back, smiled at the crowd and said, "Let's take some questions." The room went quiet as people raised their hands, hoping to be selected. Elon pointed toward the back of the hall, where a young girl stood up. The girl was different from the rest of the crowd. She wasn't dressed like the usual tech enthusiasts in suits or branded t-shirts. She wore simple clothes and had a notebook in her hand. Her voice was steady but filled with determination. "Mr. Musk," she began, "my name is Amara. I'm 19 years old and I come from a small town. I've built a robot in my garage using scrap parts. I don't have a college degree or fancy training, but I want to work at Tesla. Will you give me a job?" The room froze. No one had expected such a bold question. Some people in the audience whispered to each other, and a few even chuckled. A young girl with no degree, no professional experience, asking for a job directly from Elon Musk? It sounded impossible. Elon raised his eyebrows, clearly intrigued. He tilted his head slightly and said, "A robot, huh? What does it do?" Amara smiled nervously and replied, "Right now, it can pick up objects and perform simple tasks, but I know I can make it better if I have the right resources." The audience waited, eager to hear Elon's response. Some thought he would dismiss her immediately, while others thought he might give her a polite answer and move on. But Elon Musk wasn't like most people. He leaned forward, his voice calm but challenging. "You said you built it in your garage?" "Yes," Amara nodded. Elon paused for a moment, then said, "All right, here's the deal. If you can improve your robot to solve a real-world problem and show me something impressive, I'll consider giving you a job." The crowd gasped. Was he serious? Elon Musk, the billionaire CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, had just thrown down a challenge to a teenager. Amara's face lit up with determination. She nodded and said, "Challenge accepted, Mr. Musk." As she sat down, the audience erupted in murmurs. Some were impressed by her courage, while others doubted she could pull it off. One thing was clear. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Little did anyone know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would leave the world stunned. After the event, Amara returned home to her small town, still buzzing with excitement. The moment Elon Musk had given her the challenge replayed in her mind again and again. She had just one thought. This is my chance to change my life. Amara lived in a modest neighborhood where people knew each other well. Her house was small but cozy. In the garage behind her house was her secret workshop. It wasn't fancy at all. There was an old wooden table covered with tools, wires, and parts from broken gadgets she had collected over the years. On one side of the room, there were shelves filled with scrap metal, old motors, and batteries she had salvaged from dumpsters and junkyards. This was where her dream began. Her robot, which she had proudly shown Elon Musk in the video at the event, sat in the corner. It was far from perfect. It could pick up small objects and follow basic commands, but it wasn't enough to impress someone like Elon Musk. She knew she had to make it better, much better. The challenge was clear, but Amara didn't even know where to start. She sat down at her desk, staring at the robot, feeling overwhelmed. She whispered to herself, "How do I turn this into something Elon will notice?" Amara came from a family that struggled to make ends meet. Her mother worked as a nurse, and her father drove a taxi. They supported her as much as they could, But money was always tight. Amara had always loved technology, but she never had access to expensive tools or formal education. She taught herself everything by watching YouTube videos and reading free online tutorials. Growing up, she faced a lot of criticism. People in her neighborhood would laugh at her for spending so much time on junk. They'd say things like, "You're wasting your time on useless machines, focus on getting a real job." But Amara didn't care. She had big dreams, and this challenge from Elon Musk was her chance to prove everyone wrong. Elon had given her 30 days to upgrade her robot and show him something impressive. Amara knew this was no easy task. She needed to make her robot solve a real-world problem. But what problem could she solve with the limited resources she had? After days of thinking and researching, Amara decided on a mission. She would build a robot that could sort and recycle trash. In her community, waste management was a big issue. Trash often piled up in the streets because people didn't know how to separate recyclables from non-recyclables. If her robot could solve this problem, it would not only impress Elon, but also help her community. Amara began working day and night in her garage. Her first challenge was finding the right materials. She didn't have money to buy expensive parts, so she visited junkyards and scavenged for old electronics. Sometimes she'd find useful motors or sensors, but other times she'd come back empty-handed. Her second challenge was learning new skills. Amara had to teach herself advanced coding to make her robots smarter. She spent hours watching online tutorials and reading forums. There were times when the code wouldn't work, and she'd feel like giving up. But every time she felt frustrated, she reminded herself of Elon's words, "Show me something impressive." As the days passed, people in her neighborhood started noticing her spending more and more time in the garage. Some of them mocked her, saying, "Do you really think Elon Musk cares about some kid from this town? You're dreaming too big." Even some of her friends doubted her. One of them said, "Why don't you just focus on getting a job at a local store? This robot stuff isn't going to pay off." But Amara didn't let their words stop her. She had something they didn't, a vision and a fire inside her to prove them all wrong. One day, while struggling to fix a broken part of her robot, an elderly man from the neighborhood knocked on her garage door. He introduced himself as Mr. Harris, a retired engineer. "I've been hearing about your project," he said. "Do you need help?" Amara hesitated for a moment, but then explained her challenge. To her surprise, Mr. Harris not only understood what she was trying to do, but also offered her valuable advice. He showed her how to optimize the robot's motors and helped her understand complex coding problems. With his guidance, Amara's robot began to take shape. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was starting to show real potential. As the deadline drew closer, Amara worked harder than ever. There were nights when she barely slept, spending hours fixing errors and testing her robot. Her garage became her entire world. She didn't even notice how fast time was passing. Finally, with just 3 days left, her robot successfully sorted trash into recyclables and non-recyclables during a test run. It wasn't just functional, it was efficient. Amara couldn't believe it. She smiled and whispered to herself, "Elon Musk, you're going to see this." But deep down, she knew her journey wasn't over yet. There was still one big question. Would her robot work perfectly in front of Elon and the Tesla team? The day of the presentation was approaching fast. Amara stood in her garage, staring at the robot. It looked ready, but she knew that what mattered wasn't how it looked. It was how it performed. After weeks of struggle, her robot could now sort trash into 3 categories: recyclable, non-recyclable, and organic waste. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough to show that it could make a real difference. Amara smiled at her creation. "You're going to prove everyone wrong," she whispered. But even with the robot finally functioning, Amara couldn't shake her nerves. What if it breaks down in front of Elon, she thought. The fear of failure loomed over her, but she pushed those thoughts aside. Amara spent the final 2 days practicing her presentation. She wanted to make sure she could explain her robot's purpose clearly and confidently. Her family helped her rehearse, pretending to be the audience. Her mother, who had always been her biggest supporter, said, "You've worked so hard, Amara. No matter what happens, we're proud of you." On the morning of the event, Amara carefully packed her robot into a box and double-checked every detail. She wore her best outfit, a simple white shirt and black pants, and tied her hair neatly. It wasn't about appearances, but she wanted to look professional. As she left her house, neighbors gathered outside to watch her leave. Some of them looked impressed, while others still doubted her. One woman said, "Let's see if Elon Musk even remembers her." Amara didn't respond. She had learned to block out negativity. The Tesla campus was buzzing with activity when Amara arrived. Engineers, executives, and media representatives filled the room. Amara felt out of place among all the polished professionals, but she held her head high. When her turn finally came, she walked onto the stage carrying her robot. Elon Musk was sitting in the front row, watching her closely. The same man who had given her this challenge was now waiting to see if she could deliver. "Good afternoon," Amara began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "3 weeks ago, I stood in this very room and told Mr. Musk that I built a robot in my garage. He gave me a challenge to make it solve a real-world problem. Today, I'm here to show you what I've created." She placed her robot on the demonstration table and turned it on. The crowd leaned forward, eager to see what would happen next. Amara set up a small pile of trash, including plastic bottles, paper, and food waste. The robot whirred to life, its mechanical arms scanning the items with a basic AI system she had programmed. Slowly but surely, it began sorting the trash into separate bins. The audience watched in silence as the robot worked. It wasn't flashy or fast, but it got the job done. When the robot placed the last item in the correct bin, the room erupted in applause. Amara felt a wave of relief. She glanced at Elon, who was nodding with a slight smile. But just as she thought everything was going perfectly, the robot made a loud clicking noise and froze. The applause stopped. The room went quiet. Amara's heart sank. She quickly walked over to the robot, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she realized one of the motors had overheated. People in the audience began murmuring. Some looked disappointed, while others shook their heads. Amara could hear whispers. "She tried, but she's not ready for this level." Elon stood up and walked toward the stage. Amara panicked. Was he going to call it off? Instead, he asked, "Do you know what caused the problem?" Amara nodded, swallowing her fear. "It's the motor. It's overheating because the load is too heavy." Elon handed her a tool from the nearby table. "Fix it," he said simply. Amara's hands trembled as she opened the robot's casing. She had spent so many nights fixing similar issues in her garage, but this time it felt different. The world was watching. She replaced the motor with a spare she had brought and recalibrated the robot. It took her 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, she stepped back and restarted the robot. This time, it worked flawlessly. The robot completed the sorting task faster than before, and the audience broke into cheers. Amara let out a deep breath, her face breaking into a smile. Elon clapped and said, "That's what I like to see. Someone who doesn't give up when things go wrong." Elon walked onto the stage and stood next to Amara. "You've done something incredible," he said, addressing both her and the audience. "You've proven that innovation doesn't require fancy labs or degrees. It just needs passion and determination." He turned to Amara and added, "You've earned your place at Tesla, but more than that, I want to help you develop this robot into something that can change the world." The crowd erupted into applause, and Amara felt tears well up in her eyes. She had done it.